Welcome to the channel. Today, I bring you a stunning story of a near-death experience that completely changed Beckett Hayes' life. He had a vision about the future and received a divine warning for September 30th, 2024. What he saw could impact us all. Before we start, let us know in the comments which city you're watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more exciting stories like this. Hello, my name is Beckett Hayes. I'm 31 years old and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm an ordinary guy. I work as a high school history teacher and I lead a pretty normal life. Well, at least that was the case until a few years ago, when something extraordinary happened to me. Something that completely changed my worldview and the direction of my life. Before telling you what happened, I think it's important to talk a little about my story. I grew up right here in Charleston, a beautiful city full of history. My childhood was happy but also marked by difficult moments. My mother, Eleanor, was an incredible woman. She taught me a lot about life and about having faith. God has a plan, Beckett, she always said. And I believed that, until, well, things changed. When I was 11, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. It was a shock for the whole family. She fought bravely, but the disease was stronger. Seeing my mother, that strong and full of life woman, waste away day after day was one of the most painful experiences of my life. Even in the worst moments, she kept that sparkle in her eyes and unshakable faith. But me, I started to question everything. My mother's death left me lost. How could a good God allow so much suffering? Why did she have to leave so soon? These questions tormented me, and I walked away from the faith that my mother held dear. The following years were difficult. My father did the best he could to raise me alone, but my mother's absence was a wound that didn't seem to heal. I grew up, graduated, started working as a teacher. Outwardly, I looked fine. I had a stable job, some friends, I led a peaceful life. But inside I still carried that emptiness, those doubts, that pain of loss. It was in this context that it happened. The experience that changed everything. I wasn't looking for answers. I wasn't looking for anything extraordinary. It was just another hot summer night in Charleston. I was 27 at the time and at home, trying to sleep after a long day at work. I had no idea that in just a few hours, my life would be completely transformed. Now, looking back, I realize what a turning point that night was. Everything I believed or stopped believing was put to the test. The experience I'm going to tell you about is not something I share often. In fact, few people know this. But I feel it's important to share. Who knows, maybe my story can bring comfort, hope, or even at the very least you might on a different perspective to someone. So, if you are there, listening or reading this, know that what I am about to tell you is real. It's my truth. My experience. It may seem unbelievable, I know. If someone had told me something like this a few years ago, I probably would have doubted it. But now I know that there is much more between heaven and earth than we can imagine. It all started one summer night. Like I said, it was one of those stuffy Charleston nights and, the kind of night where the air feels thick, heavy. I was at home, alone, trying to fall asleep. He turned around in bed, restless, feeling the sweat sticking the sheet to his back. The ceiling fan hummed monotonously, barely able to circulate the hot air in the room. It was then that I felt it, that familiar feeling, that tightness in my chest that I knew so well since I was a child. I've had asthma since I was little, so I was used to occasional attacks. But this time was different. At first, I thought it was just another attack, nothing that my inhaler couldn't fix. I sat on the bed, feeling around on the nightstand for the medicine, but as the seconds ticked by, I realized something was wrong, terribly wrong. The tightness in my chest increased, as if a giant hand was crushing me from the inside. I tried to take a deep breath, but it was like my lungs had forgotten how to work. The air didn't come in. For the first time in my life, I felt real, visceral panic. This was no ordinary asthma attack. It was something much, much worse. I got up from the bed, staggering. I needed to get to the phone, call an ambulance, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My legs were shaking, too weak to support me. I fell to my knees on the bedroom floor, still desperately fighting for air. The panic increased with every second. My vision began to darken at the edges, black spots dancing before my eyes. I tried to scream for help, but no sound came out. My throat felt like it had closed completely. It was at that moment that something strange happened. In the midst of the terror and the lack of air, I felt a strange calm begin to wash over me. It was as if my body had suddenly decided it wasn't worth fighting anymore. The pain began to subside, the panic dissipated. Lying on the floor of my room, unable to move or breathe, I had the distinct sensation that I was dying. And the scariest thing, I wasn't scared anymore. It was like a part of me knew that everything was okay, that this was just a transition. My consciousness seemed to be expanding, disconnecting from my physical body. It was a feeling impossible to describe adequately, as if I were floating, moving away from myself. I saw my body lying on the ground, motionless, but I felt no attachment to it. It was like looking at an old coat that I no longer needed to wear. At that moment, I had a sudden and clear thought. So this is how you die. There was no fear in that thought, just a kind of distant curiosity. And then, when I thought it was all over, when I thought this would be my last moment of consciousness, something incredible happened. Suddenly, everything changed. The darkness that had taken over my vision dissipated, giving way to something I could never have imagined. Before me, an immense rotating tunnel appeared. It was something so vast, so majestic, that it defied description. The tunnel seemed to have no end. Its walls, if I can call it that, were made of brilliant, pulsating light. It wasn't a blinding or unpleasant light. It was warm, inviting. The colors were constantly changing, creating patterns and shapes I had never seen before. It was as if I was seeing all the colors in the universe at the same time. But the most impressive thing wasn't the tunnel itself. Around him, floating as if there was no gravity, were countless small balls of light. At first I thought they were stars or some kind of cosmic phenomenon. But then, with a certainty that I can't explain where it came from, I understood. Those lights were souls. Each little ball of light had its own personality, so to speak. Some glowed brightly, others had a softer glow. Some moved quickly, others floated serenely. It was as if each one told a different story, a unique life. And the most incredible thing, I was not alone on that journey. The lights, the souls, seemed to notice me. They approached, surrounded me, as if they were welcoming me. There was no verbal communication, but I could feel a kind of recognition, acceptance. For the first time since my mother's death, I felt a sense of complete belonging. It was as if those souls knew me better than I knew myself. There was no judgment, there were no expectations, just pure, unconditional acceptance. The tunnel seemed to call me. There was a gentle, but undeniable force pulling me inward. It wasn't a physical sensation, it was more like an invitation, as if the universe itself was inviting me on a journey. I don't know how long I stayed there, contemplating that incredible scene. It could have been seconds or eternities. Time seemed to have no meaning in that place anymore. I was completely enveloped by the beauty and peace that emanated from that setting. The memories of my life on Earth seemed distant, like a dream I had just woken up from. All the pain, all the fear I had felt moments before was completely gone. I felt light, free in a way I had never experienced before. As I floated there, surrounded by these luminous souls, I had a profound realization. Death was not the end. It was just a transition, a passage to something bigger, more beautiful and more meaningful than I could have ever imagined. With this certainty in my heart, I gave myself to the journey. Without fear, without hesitation, I let the tunnel guide me. Where to? I didn't know. But for the first time in my life, or death, I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was ready to find out what awaited me on the other side. As I progressed through the tunnel, the sensation of movement intensified. It was as if I were traveling at an unimaginable speed, but at the same time, completely still. The tunnel walls swirled around me, creating hypnotic patterns of light and color. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. The tunnel disappeared, and I found myself enveloped by a light so intense, so pure, that I almost couldn't bear it. It wasn't an eye-harming light. In fact, I wasn't even sure I still had eyes at that point. It was a light that penetrated every fiber of my being, filling me with a feeling of indescribable warmth and love. When my vision adjusted, I began to realize where I was. It was a place, well, calling it a place might not be the right word. It was more like a state of being. I found myself in a vast meadow, but a meadow like no other I had ever seen on earth. The ground, if I can call it that, was covered in flowers of every color imaginable. Some I recognized, others were completely alien to me. Each flower seemed to emit its own soft light, contributing to the overall glow that enveloped everything. Heaven. Well, there wasn't exactly a heaven as we know it. It was more as if the entire space above was filled with a warm, golden light. There was no sun visible, but the light seemed to come from all directions at once, eliminating any shadows. The air, again, I don't know if air is the right word, was filled with a sweet, comforting fragrance. It was like I could smell peace, if that makes any sense. Each breath filled me with a sense of well-being and contentment that I had never experienced before. But most impressive of all was the feeling of being completely present. On Earth, we always have thoughts running through our heads, worries about the past or the future. There, none of that existed. I was totally immersed in the moment, aware of every detail around me with startling clarity. As I took in all this beauty, I noticed something in the center of that endless meadow. It was an imposing building, a square structure that seemed to be made of solid light. It's difficult to describe. The walls, if I may call them that, shone with a radiance of their own and seemed to be adorned with jewels of bright, sparkling colors. I felt an irresistible attraction to that building. It wasn't a physical attraction, but something deeper, as if my very essence was being called. I started moving towards it, not walking like we would on Earth, but almost floating. As I got closer, the feeling of being in front of something divine, something beyond my understanding, grew. It was overwhelming, but in a good way. I felt small in the face of that greatness, but at the same time, incredibly valued and loved. Getting closer, I could see that the building had 3 large doors. These were no ordinary doors. They appeared to be made of giant pearls, each one radiating a soft, inviting light. Something inside me knew, with absolute certainty, that on the other side of those doors was Jesus. I couldn't see him, but his presence was undeniable. It was as if this entire place, this entire experience, was an extension of his love. The peace I felt, the love that surrounded me, everything emanated from him. Standing there, in front of those pearly doors, I felt a mixture of emotions that I had never experienced before. It was a combination of reverence, love, peace, and an almost palpable expectation. I knew, with every certainty in my being, that I was about to meet Jesus. The doors glowed with their own light, soft and welcoming. I could feel a heat emanating from them, not a physical heat, but something that warmed my soul. It was as if all the love in the universe was concentrated on the other side of those doors. As I contemplated taking the next step, something incredible happened. The building began to glow even more brightly, if that was possible. The light became so bright that for a moment I thought I would go blind. But there was no pain. There was no discomfort. It was as if my eyes, or whatever I was using to see in that state, had adapted instantly. And then, right in front of me, a figure appeared. It was not Jesus, as I had expected, but something equally majestic and impressive. He was a being of light, so radiant and beautiful that it almost hurt to look directly at him. Its wings, I don't know if I can call it that, seemed to be made of pure energy, sparkling with colors I didn't even know existed. Instinctively, I knew who it was. Gabriel. The angel Gabriel was before me. There were no words spoken, at least not in the sense we know. It was more like his thoughts flowed directly into my consciousness. And the first thing I felt was unconditional love, total acceptance. There was no trial, there was no condemnation, just pure, infinite love. Gabriel gave me such a profound sense of peace that I felt as if every worry and fear I had ever had in my life had simply dissolved. It was as if, for the first time, I truly understood what it meant to be at peace. But along with this peace also came an understanding that despite being so close to paradise, so close to Jesus, it was not yet my time to stay. This revelation should have made me sad or disappointed. But strangely, I didn't. Instead, I felt a kind of purpose. Gabriel didn't need to say it in words. I just understood. My journey on earth was not yet over. There was more for me to do, more for me to experience, more people for me to touch with my life. And then, gently, Gabriel began to show me things. Visions of the future, deep understandings about life and the universe. It was as if, for a brief moment, I could see and understand everything. The puzzle of existence made sense, each piece fitting together perfectly. In that moment, before Gabriel, so close to Jesus, I felt complete. Complete in a way I never thought possible. And it was with this feeling of completeness that I received the message that would change my life forever. Gabriel began to convey a message to me, not with words, but with images, feelings and understandings that flowed directly into my consciousness. It was a message of urgency, but also of hope. The angel showed me visions of the future, a not-too-distant future. I saw the world going through great changes, immense challenges that humanity would have to face. Natural disasters, conflicts, pain and suffering. But I also saw hope. I saw people coming together, helping each other, overcoming adversity with love and compassion. And then, Gabriel showed me something that left me breathless, if I was still breathing in that state. I saw a date, September 30th, 2024. That date shone with a special intensity, as if it were a crucial milestone in the history of humanity. Gabriel made me understand that this day would be the beginning of the Great Judgment, not a judgment in the sense of condemnation, but a moment of separation, of choice. Souls who lived according to God's teachings, who cultivated love, compassion, and kindness, would be elevated. Those who lost their way, who turned away from love and light, would face a different fate. But the most important thing Gabriel conveyed to me was that there was still time for change, time for regret, time to make the right choice. And that's when I understood my role in all of this. Gabriel made me see that my mission was to return to Earth and share this message. Not in an alarmist or scary way, but with love and understanding. I should be a beacon of hope, showing people that there is still time to reconnect with the divine, to choose the path of love. I confess that, at that moment, I felt a huge weight on me. How could I, a simple history teacher, carry such a huge responsibility? How could I convince people of something so extraordinary? But Gabriel, sensing my hesitation, enveloped me in a wave of love and trust so powerful that all my doubts melted away. He made me understand that I would not be alone on this mission. That divine strength would be with me every step of the way. Gabriel also showed me that it wasn't about converting people or imposing beliefs. My mission was simply to share my experience, to plant the seed of hope and love in people's hearts. The rest, the final choice, would be up to each individual. As I took it all in, I felt immense gratitude. Gratitude for having been chosen for this mission. Gratitude for the opportunity to make a difference. Gratitude for having experienced this unconditional love. And then, gently, Gabriel began to prepare me for my return. He made me understand that when I returned, I would remember everything I saw and felt, that this experience would be engraved in my soul forever. With one last hug of light and love, Gabriel began to walk away. The visions of the future, the deep understanding of the universe, everything began to dissipate like a waking dream. But the love, peace, and purpose remained. I was ready to go back, ready to fulfill my mission, ready to be a messenger of hope in a world that needs it so much. Leaving that place of absolute peace and love was one of the hardest things I have ever experienced. Part of me wanted to stay, wanted to sink into that eternal light and never leave. I could feel my mother's presence there, somewhere, and the desire to be reunited with her was almost irresistible. But I knew I had a mission to accomplish. Gabriel's words, if I can call them words, still echoed in my consciousness. The world needed to know what was coming, and I had been chosen to share that message. I felt my soul being gently pulled back. It was as if he was swimming against a gentle but persistent current. The vibrant colors of paradise began to fade, giving way to a comforting darkness. It wasn't a frightening darkness, but rather like the twilight of a perfect day. As I walked away, I could feel the limitations of the physical world returning. The weight of my body, the feeling of having lungs that needed air, the awareness of linear time. It was like putting on a heavy coat after floating freely in the water. And then, in the blink of an eye, it was back. I opened my eyes and found myself lying on the floor of my room, exactly where I had fallen during my asthma attack. The first thing I noticed was that I could breathe normally. The tightness in my chest, the panic, everything had disappeared as if it had never happened. Slowly, I sat up. The room was exactly as I had left it. The ceiling fan still hummed monotonously. The clock on the wall ticked just a few minutes past the time I last remembered looking at it before the attack. It was as if only a few moments had passed in the physical world, while to me it seemed as if I had lived an eternity. I sat there for a long time, trying to process everything that had happened. Part of me wondered if it had just been a dream, a hallucination caused by a lack of oxygen. But deep in my heart, I knew it had been real, more real than anything I had ever experienced in my life. Memories of the experience were vivid in my mind. The tunnel of light, the shining souls, the heavenly meadow, Gabriel, everything was there, crystal clear. And along with these memories came the certainty of the mission entrusted to me. I got up, my legs a little shaky, and went to the window. I looked up at the Charleston night sky, the stars twinkling softly. The world outside looked the same, but I knew it had changed. Or rather, I had changed. At that moment, I made a silent promise. I promised I would honor the second chance I was given, that I would live each day with purpose, spreading love and hope. That would prepare me for what was to come and help others prepare too. I looked at the calendar on the wall. The date of the Great Judgment, September 30th, 2024, seemed far away. But I knew the time would pass quickly. There was a lot to be done, a lot of people to reach. With a deep sigh, I went back to bed. I knew sleep wouldn't come easily that night. My mind was filled with everything I had experienced, everything I had learned. But for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. A peace that came from knowing that no matter what happened, I was not alone, and that every day, from then on, would be an opportunity to make a difference. In the months following my near-death experience, my life took on a new dimension. During the day, I continued with my normal routine, teaching classes, correcting tests, living the ordinary life of a history teacher. But at night, when I closed my eyes, it was as if a new world opened up to me. I started having dreams. Not ordinary dreams, the ones you barely remember when you wake up. These were different, vivid, intense, loaded with meaning. They were dreams that seemed more real than reality itself. At first, the dreams were fragmented, difficult to understand. Flashes of future events, symbols I didn't fully understand. but over time, they became clearer, more detailed. One dream in particular recurred frequently. In it, I saw the sky open. It was as if an invisible curtain was torn away, revealing a light so intense it was blinding, and from that light, a majestic figure descended, wrapped in a white cloak that seemed to be made of pure light. It was Jesus. There was no doubt in my mind. He descended slowly, his feet not touching the ground. His hands and feet still bore the marks of the crucifixion nails, but not as painful wounds. They were like badges of honor, shining with a light of their own. His expression was one of infinite love, but also determination. He looked down at the earth below, and I could feel the weight of that gaze. It was the look of someone who came to judge, but a judgment based on love, not condemnation. And then, his voice echoed. It was not a voice in the traditional sense. It was as if every atom in the universe vibrated with his words. The day of judgment has come. At this moment in the dream, I was always trying to warn the people around me. I saw my father, my friends, my students. I tried to scream, try to make them understand what was happening, but it was like my voice had been stolen. Nobody could hear me. I woke up from these dreams sweating, with my heart racing. The feeling of urgency, that time was running out, stayed with me throughout the day. Other dreams showed me scenes of natural disasters, earthquakes devastating cities, tsunamis swallowing entire coastlines, fires consuming forests. But the most frightening thing was not the catastrophes themselves, but people's indifference. It was as if most were blind to the signs, continuing their lives as if nothing was happening. There were also dreams of hope, visions of people coming together, helping each other in times of crisis, communities forming, based on love and mutual care. These dreams gave me strength, reminded me why my mission was so important. One night, I had a different dream. In it, I was back in that heavenly meadow I saw during my near-death experience. But this time, I wasn't alone. Thousands of people were with me, all looking up at the sky with expressions of peace and joy. I understood that they were the souls who had chosen the path of love, who were prepared for the great judgment. I woke up from this dream with tears in my eyes, but they were tears of joy and hope. It was a powerful reminder that despite all the challenges and difficulties that lay ahead, there was a greater purpose at play. A future of light and love awaited those who were willing to embrace it. These dreams became my guide, my moral compass. They constantly reminded me of the urgency of my mission and the importance of each day, each interaction, each opportunity to share love and hope. I started keeping a diary of my dreams. Every morning, as soon as I woke up, I wrote down everything I could remember. Over time, I began to notice patterns, recurring symbols. It was as if he was learning a new language, the language of the divine. But not all dreams were easy to deal with. Some were so intense, so vivid, that I woke up exhausted, as if I had lived years in a single night. On those days, it was difficult to concentrate on work, on everyday tasks. My colleagues noticed that I was different, more distant, but I didn't know how to explain what was happening. How could I tell them that every night I traveled to the future, that I saw the end of times approaching? How could he explain that he carried the weight of knowledge of the great judgment? It was at this time that I began to truly understand the burden of the ancient prophets, the loneliness of carrying a truth that few would believe, the responsibility of trying to save souls that often didn't want to be saved. But I knew I couldn't give up. Every dream, every vision was a reminder of the unconditional love I had experienced on that other plane. It was a call to be better, to do more, to love more deeply. And so, night after night, I drifted into this world of prophetic dreams, always anxious and a little fearful of what I would see next, but grateful for the guidance and purpose they brought to my life. One particularly difficult night, after a stressful day at school dealing with unruly students and a skeptical coworker who mocked my conspiracy theories about the end times, I had a dream unlike any other. This time, there were no catastrophes, no crowds, no heavens opening. It was a simple and familiar setting, the kitchen of the house where I grew up. The aroma of freshly baked apple pie filled the air, and the golden late afternoon light streamed in through the windows, giving the room an almost ethereal glow. And there she was. My mom, Eleanor, younger and more radiant than I remembered, with no trace of the disease that took her. Her back was to me, stirring something on the stove, softly humming a tune I hadn't heard in years. "Mother?" My voice was shaky, almost a whisper. She turned around, and her face lit up with a smile that seemed to contain all the love in the universe. "Beckett, my dear." I ran to her, feeling like a child again. We hugged, and in that moment, all the worries, all the fears, all the exhaustion of the last few months simply dissolved. "You're doing so well, my son," she said, pulling back slightly to look me in the eyes. "I'm so proud of you." Tears were streaming down my face. "Mom, it's so hard. Sometimes I feel like I'm not strong enough for this mission." She held my face in her hands, her touch so real it was hard to believe this was a dream. "Beckett, you are stronger than you know. Remember what I always said? God has a plan." "I know, Mom, but sometimes it's so hard to understand this plan." She smiled, a smile full of wisdom and love. "We don't need to understand everything, darling. We just need to trust and do our part. And you're doing it wonderfully." We talked for what seemed like hours. She listened to me talk about my fears, my doubts, my dreams. He gave me advice, comforted me, encouraged me. It was as if all those years apart had never existed. As we spoke, I noticed the light in the kitchen was changing. It grew more intense, brighter, reminding me of the light I saw during my near-death experience. My mother noticed my gaze. "It's almost time for you to come back, darling." Panic hit me. "No, Mom, please. I don't want to go. I miss you so much." She hugged me again, and I could feel all her love surrounding me. "I'm always with you, Beckett. Always. And we'll see you again, I promise. But right now, you have important work to do." The light grew brighter and brighter, almost blinding. "Remember, my son," my mother's voice sounded distant now, "love is the most powerful force in the universe. Use it well." I woke up with my face wet with tears, but with a light heart full of love. That meeting, even if in a dream, gave me renewed strength. I knew that my mother was fine, that she was proud of me, and that one day we would meet again. More than ever, I was determined to fulfill my mission, for myself, for my mother, and for all the souls I could help find the path to the light before the great judgment. Today, 4 years after my near-death experience, I am more committed than ever to the mission entrusted to me. Every day is an opportunity to spread love, to plant seeds of hope, to prepare people for what is to come. It hasn't been easy. I am often met with skepticism, with laughter, with looks of pity. Some call me crazy, others a religious fanatic. There were times when I almost gave up, when the weight of responsibility seemed too great to carry. But then I remember. I remember the unconditional love I felt on that other plane. I remember Gabriel's presence, the urgent message he entrusted to me. I remember the dream about my mother, her encouragement and love, and I find the strength to continue. My life has changed drastically since that night. I continue to teach history, but now I see each class as an opportunity to plant seeds of kindness and compassion in the hearts of my students. I don't talk openly about the great judgment at school. That would probably cost me my job, But I try to inspire my students to be better, to care about each other, to make a difference in the world. On weekends and evenings, I dedicate my time to study and meditation groups. People of all ages and backgrounds gather in my home to discuss spirituality, to learn about love and compassion, to prepare for what is to come. I don't impose my beliefs on anyone. I just share my experience and encourage everyone to seek their own truth. The prophetic dreams continue, sometimes more intensely than ever. Every vision, every symbol is carefully noted in my journal. Over time, I learned to better interpret these messages, to see the interconnection between them and real-world events. As September 30th, 2024 approaches, I feel a mixture of anxiety and hope. Anxiety because I know that many are not yet prepared, that many are still lost in the darkness of selfishness and materialism. Hope because I see, day after day, more people awakening, more hearts opening to love and compassion. I don't know exactly what will happen that day. My dreams and visions give me glimpses, but I know that reality can be very different from what I imagine. What I know for sure is that it will be a moment of choice, a moment of separation between those who have chosen the path of love and those who have lost themselves in the darkness. As that day approaches, I continue my mission with renewed dedication. Every person I can reach, every heart I can touch, is a victory. I know I can't save the whole world, but if I can make a difference in a few people's lives, it will be worth it. I look to the future with a mixture of fear and expectation. I know that difficult times are coming, that humanity will face challenges like never before. But I also know there is hope, that love is stronger than fear, that light always conquers darkness. My near-death experience taught me that life is precious, that every moment is an opportunity to make a difference. And this is how I intend to live until the great judgment and beyond, with love, with purpose, with the knowledge that, no matter what happens, we are all connected by something greater than ourselves. And for you, who are reading or listening to my story, I leave a request. Open your heart. Allow yourself to feel the love that permeates the entire universe. Prepare not with fear, but with hope. Because in the end, it's love that matters. It is love that saves us. It's love that takes us home. The future may be uncertain, but I know one thing. We are all on this journey together. And together, with love and compassion, we can face whatever fate has in store for us.